And we are live. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Rebel Roundtable. As always, I am super excited to have the most awesome guests on here in the world. And I get to talk to Alice Shikina today. And I was on her podcast a week or so ago, and we had all kinds of fun talking about money mindset. And today, Alice is going to tell us all about cool things to do with not negotiating with yourself. So, just backing up a second, Alice is a premier mediator and negotiator. She teaches negotiation, she mediates and does all kinds of interesting psychology that goes into getting people to the place they need to be and owns her own mediation firm. So, Alice, first of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And we were just talking right before this that she has not really done live before. And I'm like, well, if I don't do it live, I'll never do it. Editing and all that. So the Rebel Roundtable is just a live, fun conversation. So before we jump into all of my questions I have about negotiating with yourself and what you tell people with your words sometimes, give us a little background on you and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned, I mediate. I mediate divorces, I mediate workplace conflicts primarily. Those are like the two major ones.
Okay.
And I'm also a negotiation coach. So I help people through their difficult negotiations or maybe just learning how to negotiate because a lot of people are like, I don't really know what I'm doing. So that's where I come in to help you figure that out. So those are the
Yeah.
things that I love doing. I'm also an arbitrator.
Okay. So, real quick for people who may not know the difference, what's the difference between mediation and arbitration?
So mediation is where I am a third party neutral and I just help facilitate a conversation. So basically, if you are in mediation, the two of you or multiple parties hold the control of the outcome. If you go into arbitration, that's basically a private trial. I am the judge. So you have relinquished all the control so that I am the one making all the decisions for your case. I always try to tell people you don't want to do arbitration. Just go to mediation because don't give up your control to another party.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Negotiation is all about who's in control and who appears to be in control sometimes too. And then before I jump into all my questions, you are an author as well. And so, what are you have a couple books that are out, then you have two upcoming ones. Talk
Yes,
about
that's
those real quick.
correct.
Yeah.
So I have a play that I wrote called Okinawa 1945 that actually got produced a bit around the world. It went all the way to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival.
Oh.
And so there's that piece. And then I wrote a book called Negotiating with Your Kids. It's a super short read. It's more like a mini handbook. So if you need
Mhm.
some help with your children and negotiating with them, pick up that book on Amazon. And
Oh,
currently, I'm writing my next book, Influenceable, which is about how to become more influential by allowing people to influence you first.
okay.
Then my other book that's also coming out, sort of like right after that one, but it's already written, is called Don't Sleep on the Couch: Winning More Arguments Without Losing Your Marriage.
Well, that sounds like a very useful tool these days. It's so funny how much you learn through our jobs, through what we do, that then becomes like this thought leadership material that you can share through books and through your podcasts and things like that too. So, um, and of course, I'm always a little rebellious, and so I always come up with a fun tagline for these things. So today was "You taught them you're free," is what I called today's podcast, and most of it is just the mindset of what negotiation actually is and how you really start almost with negotiating with ourselves first. And you've said that to me before. You said that we start negotiating with ourselves before we negotiate with others. What do you mean by that?
So a lot of times people think, oh, I don't know if I really deserve that rate. I don't know if I should ask for that. Do I really deserve that? That sort of thing. So that's
Yep.
happening sort of in the background. And it shows up more not as thoughts, but an emotional charge,
Mm-hmm.
right? If people are saying, well, the package price is, and when you say it, if you're feeling uncomfortable, that is the thought process that you're maybe not privy to, but it's happening in the back of your mind and it's causing you to feel uncomfortable. So there
Mm-hmm.
are constant thoughts in your mind that one side of your mind is negotiating with another. And while you might not be privy to the actual words, it's showing up as discomfort.
Yeah. And it shows up like people can sense it. It's almost the hesitation sometimes if you don't say things confidently. They're like, do they really mean this?
Yes.
Or
Or you
they're
end
just
up
kidding.
apologizing. You might say,
Yep.
I know it's expensive, but this is how much it costs. Or you say your price and then you wait for like half a second and you say, but if you want, I can offer a discount, right? All that stuff is you negotiating with yourself.
Yep.
And in that particular case, is actually you negotiating against yourself.
Which is horrible. And we don't, I know we're not intentionally doing it. It's just like these things that our brain, our psychology does to ourselves if we're not aware of it. And so, do you see professionals sabotaging themselves like that regularly?
Absolutely. Yes. And not even just that way. A lot of times I see people sabotaging themselves because they're in victim mentality,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Yep.
instead of asking for what they deserve or even going after what they deserve, they start asking for all kinds of other things that really has nothing to do with them becoming a victor in their own lives.
Yep.
Like they're sort of perpetuating that story that I'm a victim, and so then they continue to ask for things that a victim would ask for versus someone who can stand on their own right, not in comparison to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and not try to, because if you're a victim and then you try to win something that a victim would win, you're constantly going to be self-sabotaging.
Yep. Yeah. But it's hard. I mean, it's really hard unless you're aware of it or unless you can identify that it's happening. We've talked about that before, where that awareness is really the first piece of figuring out why you're doing something that you're doing.
Yes. But I think that it's really important when you are negotiating with yourself, or even if like you said, some people are not aware. So someone might
Mm-hmm.
say, how do I become aware of whether I'm doing that or not? Notice the emotions showing up in your body, right?
Yep.
Notice when you're feeling uncomfortable or you're feeling discomfort. That is a sign that something else is happening. And then that can lead you to question yourself to say, oh, why did I feel uncomfortable? What was going on within me that made me feel uncomfortable when I said that, right?
Yep.
Or if you are negotiating something that doesn't make you feel enormously happy, but you're just trying to be vindictive or, you're trying to beat somebody, right? Then you also might ask yourself, like, what's going on with me that I'm not trying to do something that is going to be a win-win for everyone and it's going to create the most amount of joy in the world for
Right.
you and for the other person, right? So those are good things to lean into. It's like physical discomfort because it will tell you something about yourself and you can start doing some internal like, questioning.
I don't know. Lawyers aren't very good at like their feelings and recognizing things. So one of my favorite topics to work with lawyers on is charging, not just charging for consults, but charging like what they're worth and for what they're doing for people, but charging for consults is usually where I start. Why do you think so many professionals struggle to charge for their expertise? Like, is it this whole mindset thing?
It is a whole mindset thing, but it starts from when you were a kid. It's the
Yeah.
money stories that you learn when you're a child, right? So if you were in a household where someone kept saying, you know, uh, that's too expensive. We don't have any money. Don't spend it, right? Or whatever it is, whatever the thing.
Yeah.
We don't have any money. We're poor. We're poor. We're poor. Like whatever those messages were, they end
Mhm.
up becoming in your psychology. And another thing that a lot of people hear is that money's bad or
Yeah.
only evil people are rich, right? Or once you become rich, you become corrupt. Like
Yeah.
whatever those stories are. And so you have to just become aware of what your money story is. And I think that's the work that you do, Jen, a lot with your
Yeah.
clients, is to really uncover those money stories so that uh, that doesn't show up when they're trying to charge people because it shows up directly in your business. So I had someone on my podcast the other day saying, and it was very true. I hadn't thought of it in the way she phrased it, but she said, you can only negotiate up until like you hit your own personal growth limits. Like
Hmm.
you can't negotiate for more than that,
Beyond that. Yeah.
right? And so I thought that was an interesting observation that
Yeah.
yes, if you struggle with oh, that I deserve this amount of money, if you struggle with that internally, then you're not going to be able to negotiate for more money because it's that energetically is blocking you.
So, talking about our inner selves is all kinds of fun for lawyers, but let's also talk about psychologically with clients or potential clients. What's happening with them when someone is always giving away advice for free? What does that do to like the client's perception of the professional they're working with if they're always doing free advice?
Well, so you become less valuable, right? Because you're just like, oh, I can just call her. I can just, she's never gonna say no. She never sets her boundaries. And while people may not think to themselves, oh, well, Alice doesn't set her boundaries, that's the feeling they're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And they're
Yep.
going to feel like, oh, she always lets me call her. She always gives me advice. She talks to me for like an hour. So then you
Yep.
start to feel like it's okay. Not so much that, oh, the value is low. What happens is because you don't set a boundary, the client doesn't realize there's a boundary, and now they're constantly breaking what you feel like are invisible boundaries.
Yep. I have also found that clients, like when you say, oh, this is free, but then I'm going to charge you, they almost have a harder time with that because they're like, well, why are you charging me now when you gave me so much free before? Like you
Yes.
can't get into that next phase of here's the engagement type thing.
Yes. So you have to set the boundary from the very beginning. It's very similar to like setting ground rules in a conversation. So I
Yep.
always, when I'm coaching people about having difficult conversations, I always say, you cannot set the rule of, hey, we cannot interrupt each other in the middle of the argument. Like you
Right.
cannot do that. You have to set it up way before, even before you ever have an argument to say, hey, Jen, next time we have an argument, can we agree that we will not interrupt one another? Like it has to be preset.
Yep.
So in the same way, if you continue to allow people to get free information in the middle of all of that engagement, you're like, oh, by the way, now I'm going to start charging you. It actually isn't fair to the client because
Yep.
you have signaled to them that this is okay with you. And so to set a boundary in the middle of the relationship feels very like jarring. So you have to be
Mm-hmm.
very careful about setting it. And if you notice someone doing it in the very beginning and you haven't said it, you can say, hey, by the way, like, I will take your call and I'll answer it, but like this is money that I'm going to charge you. So
Yep.
so even if you didn't set it like before the entire engagement, do it on the very first time that they break it. The very
Yep.
first time they start calling you for free advice, say, I will give it to you, but I'm going to charge you for it. So don't wait, because if
Mm-hmm.
you wait, that is problematic because you're going to break the trust between
Yep.
you and the client.
Yep. So let's talk about setting those boundaries because I find lawyers don't do this very well with their client expectations and how they communicate these types of things. What's the expert advice here on how to set up these boundaries so that the clients actually know them? Because I feel like a lot of attorneys do things assuming the client knows how everything works. And so what do you have for best tips for like actually setting those boundaries so that they're clearly communicated to the
Yeah, so
clients?
I actually used to do that work for a lawyer where I was the one making all the calls and setting all the boundaries at the beginning. So
Yep.
if you have a paralegal, have them do it, but there's a whole like hour long call that I used to make to say, here's how the entire litigation process looks like. I
Mm-hmm.
gave it to them on paper so they could see it afterwards because I had a very good
Yep.
feeling that they like maybe understood 10% of what I was saying, right? And you know what was interesting, Jen? We did that call multiple times with the same clients. Like
Yeah.
maybe 6 months later, be like, okay, we need to go over that exact same call again. And I always, at that point, I felt like I'm just repeating myself. And aren't these people feeling offended that I'm like literally giving them the same information? But they're probably picking up new information
Yep.
because we've moved along in the litigation process. And so I think that being very basic is important.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I feel like a lot of times lawyers operate with other lawyers, and then
Mm-hmm.
you sort of like forget what is legal speak. And so you're
Yeah.
starting to say words like, oh, yeah, we have a deposition without actually telling your client what a deposition is, right? Because you just sort of forget because it just becomes
Yeah.
your normal daily
Because you live
life
it. Yes.
and you live it, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times I also had to remind the lawyers I was working with, like, oh, by the way, that is completely legal jargon. You might want to explain what that term means. And they'd be like, oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. Let me explain what that means. So be very cognizant
Mm-hmm.
about using legal jargon with your clients who may not understand the words. So really dumbing it down And
Yep.
it's not dumbing it down. It's dumbing it down if you're a lawyer. It's not dumbing it down for your client because your client is like, I don't know anything. I don't know timelines. I don't know what the process looks like. I don't know what to expect. And so I would go over what an entire deposition looks like, how they have to act, what they should and shouldn't do, right? And so I went over all the basics so
Yep.
that they never felt like I have no idea what's going on. I don't want anyone to feel that way. So we made sure that we train them. So there was sort of like a client training program
Yeah.
that sort of like happened alongside the litigation.
Yep. And I do that a lot. I recommend that a lot for lawyers that they set up their own personalized, client onboarding and training program because it sets these expectations. And the biggest complaint that I hear from clients is I have no idea what's going on with my case. I don't know what's next. I can't get a hold of my lawyer, those
Yep.
kinds of things. And
Yep.
it's a lot of times because the lawyers are overwhelmed and they're working, but they also don't have great systems set up to communicate. So
Yep. Yep.
I
Even
love
just
that.
hiring someone just to do just
Yep.
that work,
Yep.
which is mainly not even legal work. It's just a human to human, like connection type thing. And then have that person really try to be the face for
Mhm.
you. So you want to pick someone who is competent and someone who you feel like represents your company well. And then that person is like the point person. And
Yep.
that person
Exactly.
can maybe like call them once a month or once a quarter to say, here's an update. And even if there's no update, to say, I'm calling you to let you know that there is no update,
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
then
Yeah.
they feel like, okay, I got word that there is no update, but at least I know that there's no update, right?
Yes. Yes. And I think that that's hard for lawyers too, because they're like, well, I want to have an update. I don't want to contact them for nothing, but that's not how the client sees it.
Right. They
They
just feel
see
like
that.
you're ghosting them.
Yeah, exactly. So as a mediator, you've worked with people in conflict. What is talking about emotion? Like what happens when emotion enters mediation and negotiation?
Okay, how much time do we have?
Well, we may have to schedule a follow-up, but yes.
So I always try to keep people calm during my mediations because it's really the only way for communication to happen. The minute anyone is even defensive, if you're feeling defensive, guess what? You cannot hear me. I might be saying beautiful words, I might be relaying very articulately how I feel, and you can't hear anything I'm saying because you're feeling defensive. So basically, what happens in your brain, to very, very short of it,
Yeah.
is that your amygdala gets triggered. The amygdala puts you into fight, flight, or freeze or fawn mode. And so all of those things are to help protect you, but they also
Mhm.
stop any incoming information from coming in. So I really try hard to make sure people never get to that state in my mediations. And if they are feeling that way, I give them a teeny tiny bit of coaching at the beginning where I say, if you feel like you're defensive, angry, irritated, upset, or, and this is an important piece, if you feel your heart rate going up, your jaws clenching, your head is pounding, your stomach is in knots. So I kind of give them physical things to look for. I say, please ask for a breakout room. And almost everyone uses it. And they look really calm when they're asking for it. So what happened is I started recognizing that people have a really good poker face. And I don't necessarily know when someone's feeling upset because they do such a good job of looking calm. And so then I gave them sort of like what to look for so that they can alert me in case I don't see it. And so now a lot of times people say, Alice, I think this is a good time to go into a breakout room. And so they smile and they say it with a really nice tone of voice. And internally, they're like raging.
They're screaming. Yes. Again, you're setting the expectation and you're putting it in their head from the beginning so that they know to ask for it. And if you didn't do that, it would just hijack the whole thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm really curious about your upcoming book with influence. Do you think, and this is something that professionals talk about all the time when they talk about networking and extroverts and introverts and influencing and that kind of thing, do you think people can learn influence, or is it something that you're just born with?
No, you absolutely can learn it. It's called Influenceable. It's coming up. Well, I'm
Yeah.
going to start marketing it soon, so you'll everyone will see it. But it's about learning how to make deeper connections with people because once you
Yep.
make a really deep connection, then you can really influence people like a lot. But if you do not make those connections, it's hard to influence. Even as a lawyer, if you're not
Yep.
making a connection with your client, you might struggle with client control because you have not gained enough trust for them to just allow you to do your job and be the lawyer. So they will question you every turn you make. If you have
Yeah.
not built that trust, they'll be like, "Are you sure, Jen? I don't think that's a good idea." And then it's going to slow your process down because now you have a client who is out of control, who is trying to micromanage your legal work when they're not a lawyer. And it's very frustrating. And it's because you haven't built that connection that allows you to influence the client more deeply.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because as you're saying that, and I've talked about influencing before, and one of my courses is called Easy Not Sleazy, because people feel like influencing, like you're manipulating people sometimes, like and I'm like, you are, but you're doing it for a good reason. Like you
Right.
want to help them. It has to be because you want to help them, not because you want them to do something that's against their best interest kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
And so I think that people fall into that, like influencing sounds like you're manipulating everybody around you.
No, I mean, if you really think about influence, every single thing is influencing everybody all the time. Like
Yep.
anything around you is influencing you. So to say like, oh, influence is the same as manipulation is kind of like twisting what's really happening, right? Because if you
Yes.
have a very trusted mentor and they say something, all of a sudden you're gonna be like, wow, I learned something new because it came from a trusted person, right?
Yep.
So it's all about trust and connection. And if you trust and connect with people, you will have a greater influence over them.
And I think lawyers miss out on the opportunity to be that trusted connection because they try to separate themselves too much from their business and they're not really authentic. And it's all like you look at their social media for their business and it's all business, business, business. And no one really connects with that.
Right.
And so I think lawyers miss out on that connection
Yes.
part sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I love the idea of called influenceable. I think I'm gonna be so looking forward to your release of your book. So um do you think so what makes someone influential without being like that used car salesman? Is it just creating connection? Is there something that smart influencers do?
Yeah, so really, I've got a four-step method that I talk about in my book called the Shikina
Mhm.
influence method. But one of the steps is really being able to listen to someone. And it's interesting because a lot of times people have mastered the whole like eye to eye contact, nodding their head, leaning in, like they've mastered that. But that in and of itself does not show that you have heard someone. And so it's really learning to practice. It's the art of active
Yeah.
listening, which
Okay.
is hearing what someone says, being able to articulate it back to them. So, in a way that they feel like, oh, you totally heard everything I had to say. And, Jen, it's not necessarily just parroting it back. Sometimes you can paraphrase, but not only that, something that I do frequently as a mediator I will say something like this. So, Jen, you didn't exactly say these words, but what I'm sensing is, you're really excited. You're really curious about reading the book, even though you didn't say that. That's what the communication that I'm receiving from you. Is that correct? And
Hmm.
then the people will usually tell me, actually, yes, right? And so when you're able to see someone so deeply that they don't even have to say words and you're saying something else to describe what they're feeling,
Hmm.
they're really going to feel like, oh, I'm like feeling really connected because I didn't even say that, but she picked up on it.
Yeah. I don't know, Alice. That sounds like a lot of work.
It is a
Is
lot of
I
work.
know. Well, and that's what I think. Like if you're talking about networking and trying to find people in your network, stop wasting time with people that aren't good partners because you have to work really hard at the ones that are good to know what they do and that kind of thing. And I find people try this scattershot approach that isn't effective because they can't get down to the connections they need. So,
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say, and this is what I'm imagining, is
yeah,
when people go to a huge networking event, they're like, I have 1 hour. Let me try to like say hello to like as many people as possible. So they just go around passing out business cards saying, hi, my name is Alice, my name is Alice, my name is Alice, and they're just doing that, right? As,
yeah,
as opposed to connecting with two or three quality people where you feel like, wow, I really like this person. Our energies are like vibing really great, and I can see myself doing business with that person. That will probably get you a lot more business in the long run than just running around and trying to just get your face in front of as many people as possible and having these very shallow and very short conversations where someone says, you know what, it's been like 2 minutes, but I gotta run. It was really nice meeting you, gotta go, right? Then it's like the person is like, that person's really not even interested in me. Like, why should I bother having any kind of relationship with that person, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and I want to point out that something you said earlier, because it keeps popping back up in my head, is we're negotiating and influencing every single minute of the day. Like, even with it's ourselves, our kids. I love your, negotiating with kids because they're constantly trying to convince you to go get them an ice cream at the store or do something. They're the best salespeople ever. But I think if you recognize that, it becomes easier to talk about it instead of feeling that you have to be a salesperson or you have to be this influencer. If you think about it more, of everything you do is like this.
Yes, absolutely. Like at home, oh, what do you want to have for dinner? That is a negotiation,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
Or what movie do you want to go see tonight? That is a negotiation. So every single thing. So a lot of times when people say, well, I don't really negotiate a lot, I'm like, no, you actually do negotiate, all the time. And even at work, or if you run your own company, like you might be talking to vendors or you might be talking to clients. And so every single conversation, there is some kind of negotiation and some kind of influence happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the sooner someone realizes that, the easier it becomes to start reflecting and looking at, how to do it well.
Yes. And I also like to tell people that if you think you're not negotiating a whole lot, and I used to tell people, you need to come take my class because you're missing a lot of opportunities.
So let's talk about that because I do have to wrap up because I try to keep these to 30 minutes because my attention span is that of a squirrel. But I love talking to you. Where can people find you and what resources do you have out there?
Sure. They can find me at shikinamediation.com, and my last name is spelled Shikina. And I also have a podcast, as you mentioned at the top of this podcast. It's called Negotiation with Alice. And if you go to negotiationwithalice.com, you can see just the titles, and the titles themselves will tell you what we're negotiating that day. And so you can flip to one that is just, something that's interest of you and listen in on that. And then you can check out my books on Amazon.
Very cool. Well, I will put that all in the show notes. And thank you for having me on your podcast recently, where we talked about money, our money stories, and things we tell ourselves. That was very fun. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. Definitely go check out Alice's website with her courses and things like that, because she's got some amazing workshops and courses on negotiating too out there. And there's a link to it on her website. I was playing with it yesterday, going through a few different things and seeing what was out there. So really cool. So thank you, Alice, for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
And we will see everybody else next Friday. And I hope to bring you some interesting information that you may need in your professional life. So thanks for visiting the Rebel Roundtable. And I see you Friday mornings at 9 a.m.